BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Drum and bass is everywhere. The fast-beating heart of your workouts, the pure release of your nights out. And it's still breaking new ground. This is the story of how it rose and rose. I'm DJ Flight, and this is Turn It Up, a short history of drum and bass. Episode 6, D&B Pops, again. Towards the end of the noughties, drum and bass was reaching new heights of popularity, and DJ Fresh was right at the crest of the wave.
I was actually in hospital at the time when this was happening, and I was actually planning on putting the baton down for a while. I hadn't been very well for a few years, and I was in the hospital having this tumour removed, and I came to after the operation, and my mum was like in the room with me, and she's like, you know, the Gold Dust is like been 22 in the charts like for the last week.
When Fresh had recovered from his op and got back out there playing gigs, he noticed something.
So it was the weirdest thing. There'd be like girls coming up to me after the set, right? Like normal, healthy students that weren't crazy drum and bass fans coming up to me and being like, I love Gold Dust. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the other, like, what about like All That Jazz and like the Nine? And like, don't you like, I don't care about that. I just want to hear more Gold Dust.
It was official. D&B had climbed out of the underground and into the mainstream, helped by main stage acts like Pendulum and foundation DJs like Fabio and Grooverider, who'd been doing their bit for the music on Radio 1 for years.
Somewhere out there in the vast nothingness of space.
And I'm playing it from start to finish.
Somewhere far away.
It's called Slam. Understand this tune. I got my solicitors standing by. You can't do nothing to me.
Gleaming stars in the obsidian sky.
I love this tune. Pendulum, forward, stand and salute.
Endless sea. Confined to a tiny spit of sand. Unable to escape.
Groove was heavily involved in Pendulum. And that whole sound. I mean, Groove played Slam for the first time. And then Pendulum headlined Radio 1 Weekender.
A live D&B act topping a bill that features Justin Bieber, Biffy Clyro, and Rihanna.
All right, we're going to try something out.
That tells you everything you need to know.
We're going to do a sonic wave from the back to the front. The back, can you hear me? Wait for it. All right, everybody crouch down.
V Recordings' Brian G remembers Pendulum having a massive impact on the D&B circuit. Suddenly, people wanted production.
And then there was a time where everything was getting geared towards this big stadium sound.
Sub Focus had been growing his own audience for years. At a certain point, a bigger live show, like the gig at Wembley Arena supporting Pendulum, just seemed like a natural progression.
I've been a long-term fan of like acts like Chemical Brothers and Daft Punk, and I love those sort of like live visual spectacles. And, obviously the Pendulum guys going from strength to strength. And I think, they were responsible for bringing in a lot of new fans. I think that was like a big ambition of mine at that time, is to sort of like transition into doing things like that as well.
The atmosphere of change and momentum wasn't only taking place on festival main stages, it was spread into every corner of the community. In 2007, DJ Storm brought something new to a D&B scene already well into its second decade, yet still heavily male-dominated. An all-female lineup at Herbal. The Hackney Club was a mecca for small, vibrant parties and was situated just a stone's throw away from the old Blue Note. The night was called Feline.
And it was funny because I did the door and financially backed it and did all the flyers and all that kind of stuff. And then it got a little vibe about it and people started talking about it. And then we came downstairs and we were successful on the main dance floor. I had you there and Miss Pink, who I already knew and were established DJs. And then obviously Mantra and Panka came, so Feline was born. And, we had Deism and we had Cheekaboo, so we were a full-on ladies crew, and it was nerve-wracking to do it. But for me, I felt, yes, I've got enough female DJs to run a night now, which to me at that point was progress.
I have so many amazing memories of Feline. D&B TV live streams, Mad Nights Abroad, the Herbal Residency. The scene was popping off at the time, getting bigger and bigger, but this was old school. Real DIY, intimate and friendly raving with loads of smiling faces. Storm.
We were all a bit cottage industry, you know. You might have to take over the door when I was on the decks, and, you know, we worked it all together, but I think it was a beautiful thing, Feline.
Feline Spirit was progressive, but the energy was pure nostalgia. The flip side of the coin to all of the crossover success. DJ Fabio.
Every time you get this commercialization, you do get the rebels come out, and they all kind of make such interesting music. And dubstep came along, and everyone was kind of like, oh my God.
Dubstep's impact was immense and indisputable, particularly after more worldwide and mainstream recognition came around 2009. DJ Storm saw it as a direct response to a lack of imagination in drum and bass.
Yeah, I think there was a lack of excitement to a certain extent with the sound, and I think we lost the crowd because it's drum and bass, not drum and mid-range bass. Dubstep did have proper bass, let's be honest, you know what I mean? And like you say, there were some interesting tunes. It's almost like we weren't getting it right for some reason at that time.
Dubstep may have sounded fresh and new, but it had many familiar fingerprints all over it. Fabio.
A lot of it was drum and bass producers that got a little bit disenchanted. And then again, like everything, people always pick on drum and bass and kind of act like, oh, well, you lot are dead now. You're finished, you know, dubstep's here and it's so much better.
Sub Focus, who scored top 40 hits with 2009's Rocket and 2012's Out the Blue, never saw it as an either-or situation. They fed into each other naturally.
For a while, like drum and bass felt like this genre on its own, and then like it was nice to have like genres that sort of linking to it, and dubstep has a very similar sort of like heritage in a way. They're both descended from dub reggae ultimately, so it was a really cool moment, and it was inspiring to see like both Chase and Status guys and Nero make massive inroads in dubstep as well.
The studios Sub Focus worked in at the time proved totally inspiring, not least for being in such close proximity to producer friends, but also the British pop history seeping out of the walls.
The whole complex was owned by Pete Waterman, which is mad because he's like a famous 80s pop producer, and there were just like Rick Astley and like Kylie gold discs everywhere, and we were just making heinous like drum and bass and dubstep in there, so it was really funny contrast.
Chase and Status remember it as an incredible time to write music. They spoke to Rewind Mag in late 2009 about the space, vibe and community feel of the building, a creative base for some of D&B and dubstep's key players.
And just in this corridor there's Shy FX, Sub Focus and Nero as well, all next door to each other, so it's a real production hub. Yeah, the vibe is brilliant here, you know, we're all here all the time, and just all bouncing ideas off each other, so it's really cool.
It took a while for the general public to warm to drum and bass, but seemingly not dubstep. Like many others, Fresh took the opportunity to experiment with the genre, and in 2011 achieved a completely unexpected but incredible feat. Dubstep's, and his own, first ever UK #1 single. Louder, featuring Sean Evans of Bristol electronic music trio Kosheen.
I can't describe it. It's like the most amazing feeling that I've ever experienced. I remember things like driving back from gigs like up north and stopping at the traffic lights and cars around me playing Louder, coming out of the car and just being like, wow, this is something that I haven't experienced before. Even though I've been lucky to have all of this acceptance and support from my friends in the drum and bass world, this is like something different, you know. It was just absolutely mind-blowing.
The boom of electronic music from the late noughties onwards brought many opportunities for artists making the stadium or big room sounds. Chase and Status garnered underground acclaim via early releases on Renegade Hardware, their debut album More Than a Lot on Andy C's Ram Records, and regular plays across BBC Radio 1 and 1Extra. Then, things really moved up a gear. The duo's popularity rose in tandem with signing to a major label for second album, No More Idols, and slight change in production style. A wider range of tempos, plethora of vocal collabs sent Chase and Status to dizzying heights, including a peak number 2 on the UK album chart and headline slot on Glastonbury's West Holt stage. DJ Fresh.
When you have a big band and a big light show, festival promoters have got more confidence to put you in front of a big crowd of people, and suddenly you go from being a dance stage act to a main stage act, or a drum and bass stage to a dance stage act, or, you know, it gives you the ability to connect with a different audience.
A management deal with Jay-Z's Rock Nation also had Chase and Status producing for superstars like Rihanna, continuing a tradition of D&B producers lending their skills to pop. Producing for pop stars, hangouts with hip-hop legends, a very surreal moment for D&B. But Chase and Status were happy to take on the new challenge. They told Fabio and Grooverider about the recording experience.
The whole entourage was down there, you know, literally after that phone call, sort of 2 weeks later, we're standing in a room with Rihanna, Jay-Z, Drake, her management, their management, Pharrell's there, Beyonce's swanning about, and they all literally look at us, 25 people look at us and go, right, we're all here because of Chase and Status, let's hear what you got.
Jungle drum and bass has always been a force to be reckoned with. Artists called up to work with some of the biggest names in music shows just how far we'd come and how much the scene had grown in both support and stature since the original raves in fields and warehouses. Sub Focus.
I think around that time is when I felt like the whole sort of scene was really growing again, and I think electronic music as a whole was really starting to blow up in the late noughties, and that sort of coincided with like this big EDM boom in the States. So I think it was part of like a wider thing around then that was happening with electronic music.
The idea of superstars in electronic music has always been a weird one. The culture was founded on ideas of community, no egos allowed. But whether people wanted it or not, superstars were being made all over the place. After his first #1 single, Fresh had continued his genre experiments.
It was kind of like an interesting challenge to see how I could experiment with songs around the drum and bass and other, like, you know, breaks and whatever production that I was doing, and to experiment with like song structure and see how I could mix those things together in a way that would keep that interest there from this new audience without totally going against the vibe of everything that I'd done before. And I think I managed that to mixed effect, like, over that period of time. Hot Right Now felt like a progression, like there was something about the style of the vocal, obviously Rita Ora, and the track that made it feel pioneering to me.
Enter, at long last, drum and bass's very first UK #1. DJ Fresh's Hot Right Now, featuring Rita Ora.
It was like the first time I'd heard like a drum and bass song that had a hard backing track and had this like catchy pop kind of vocal that I could still play in my set and didn't feel too weird.
As much as the community clings to its underground credentials, we had to smile when that happened, right? This was a massive achievement. A D&B tune taking the top spot of another British institution, the UK singles chart.
It takes the drum and bass to the masses as never before. So, if they hear that tune, it might give them the inkling to come and listen to the underground drum and bass things that are happening. And that's a really good thing, I think, at the end of the day. And there's nothing wrong with drum and bass being in the charts. You know, fantastic, really, that Fresh achieves that. Who knew that was going to happen, really?
I don't think any of us predicted D&B would become so popular that it topped the UK charts. Not even Fabio, who spent decades championing the music.
That moment was another big moment for drum and bass, with Fresh then, you know, having numerous hits. He didn't just have one. I think he had 3-4 top 10 hits. I think for the first time it's starting to seep into consciousness of people. It still seems surreal to me hearing drum and bass on mainstream, because it still doesn't sound like anything else. It's so abstract, and it's got these drums flying all over the place. And I remember the first time my sister heard drum and bass, she said it sounds like a car rolling down a hill and crashing on the floor. I think to some people it still sounds like that. And you know what? I'm quite happy about that, because I never want there to be a day, and I know it sounds strange, where everyone likes it. I still want to play drum and bass so some people can go, what is that?
It's time to elevate this sound.
In the next episode, we look at the new wave of women artists gaining more visibility than ever, thanks to new technology and social media platforms. And D&B proves itself once again by hitting #1 again. You've been listening to Turn It Up, a short history of drum and bass with me, DJ Flight. Hit subscribe now to get the latest episodes as soon as they drop.
If you like this podcast, then why not check out Radio 1's Drum and Bass Show? If you're looking for the hottest D&B, fire mixes, and the biggest guests in the world, then we're the one for you. Obviously, I'm a bit biased. Listen now. Just search Drum and Bass in BBC Sounds.
Radio 1 Screen Time.
My first question is, what up, dorks?
What up? Listen to me, Ali Plum, talk to ludicrously famous film stars from career-defining moments.
Talking about the industry with Al Pacino was really one of the highlights of my career.
To the hidden secrets of the industry.
Put a little bit of witch's brew in their drinks. I was like, you will cast me.
Radio 1 Screen Time with me, Ali Plum.
He hasn't got the accent or the voice.
Thanks, Tom.
But he's got the energy.
Available to hear on the BBC Sounds app.